We're going to review the article in the January-February HBR of Intuit CEO Scott Cook on building a design-driven company. Now, it's an interesting quote, as I usually like to start my PowerPoints, by Billie Holiday. If I'm going to sing like everybody else, then I do not need to sing at all. And I think this is kind of the unofficial mantra of Intuit, because they were like everybody else initially, and they no longer are. And the intended benefit of that is the market positioning that they enjoy. So let's jump into it. So what are the successful strategy cornerstones? We've got analyzing one strategy, your capabilities, pardon me, and analyzing value created for all your stakeholders. And this is something that Intuit has done very well at. So let's look at analyzing strategy. Well, this is a must for them. It's not like they're a niche industry where people can only get financial software directly from them. It's a very highly commoditized industry, just like, in my opinion, PC and laptops are, where the lowest price is always going to win. Scott Cook laughs about having what they joked as the 47th mover advantage. They were not the first people in, and they jumped in, basically feed into a sea of sharks where they had their competition lined up for them. And I think maybe that's why they've differentiated themselves so well, because they had to be agile and move on the go from the very get-go. Definitely one of their biggest competitors was Microsoft. I don't know if they still make Microsoft money or not. It had always been on any new computer that I purchased, and I didn't use it very much, if at all, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And finally, they're in an industry where it's not very exciting to balance your checkbook. Doing your income taxes or paying bills is not a very sexy activity. So again, I think all these points made Intuit realize they had to differentiate themselves in order to achieve that long-term sustainability. So, well, the question is, how do they do that? They had to be different and do what others weren't doing. You remember the Billie Holiday quote earlier. Incremental improvements, they tried. That's where small, inexpensive product enhancements take place. Basically low cost and hopefully higher return based on the small amount of capital invested. That was kind of the norm amongst all of its competitors, and they learned very early on that that was not helping them. They moved beyond the spreadsheet, and this is where the design aspect comes in. Everybody was, the whole thing back in the day looked like a spreadsheet. Intuit, as we'll talk about earlier, through design made it more user-friendly, even though that wasn't their goal. It was a side effect of design, but they wanted to be all about design, and using something people are already familiar with definitely kicked them off on the right step. Design by delight. This is a very key point to Intuit, and we're going to have some fun with that in a little bit. So design was the key to implementing strategy and obtaining sustainable advantage. Design by delight, no more spreadsheets. This again was their answer to differentiation. Whether they knew it or not in the beginning, Intuit underwent a capability audit, and what they did was they reviewed all their end-to-end processes of the departments within the company. This went on from HR to accounting to see how they can improve operations through design. And once they learned how to do that, I think it made it easier for them to take those lessons learned and apply it to their customers. They would ask their customers about their end-to-end processes with Quicken, from shopping for it, using it, customer support, and all of that yielded a great bunch of data that they could use to improve their designs. But it's funny, they didn't stop there, and it wasn't just about financial software. Cook was really serious about their strategy based on design, so they involved everybody in the company to think about design, even their attorneys and their accountants. They would ask their employees, what products do you love, and what about it, their design, do you love most about it? So instead of looking at a narrow niched market, what would work, Cook was really revolutionary in his strategy, where he looked at what people liked across the board and was able to pick and choose what he liked about that. And again, this allowed for the product differentiation, which in turn gave them the market share. Involvement of all stakeholders was a key. It wasn't just the board making these decisions. Even though they over time increased their designers by 600%, they had their designers on equal footing, or kind of had a equal voice at the table, along with product managers and engineers. I kind of liken it to, imagine if you were at Lemoyne and it was just the IT department that was determining how professors or students would use Canvas or Echo without input from anybody else. They brought more people to the table, and they brought the right people to the table, and on top of that they had great information to back everything up. And finally, they work side by side to with consumers, with the product. What do you like? What don't you like? And it definitely gave them a great POV point of view. TurboTax, my own personal thing with TurboTax. I was really hesitant to use it because this is back many years ago. Because I thought income tax was just this hellacious thing. I remember my father growing up, all the papers, all the forms. So I remember going to an H&R Block where I had a guy who was maybe a year or two older than I was. I'd been out of pharmacy school a couple of years ago, who just stared at a computer screen and was just asking me these questions, just line for line. And, I had short sales in some stocks that I traded, and he couldn't answer them. He had to get somebody else in. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I ended up paying $280 for this nonsense. So I tried Intuit out. I tried their TurboTax, and guess what? Very straightforward, very well designed, plug and play technologies. And there's some nice little caveats that come off of that, which we'll go into in just a little bit. So properly leveraging IT for differentiation. So basically, in a nutshell, and again, I'm not used to being brief, Professor Zimmer. It's not my strength, so I'm trying to keep this in the 8 to 12 minutes, and I'm coming up on 8 right now. Their whole strategy was first spun off on a unintended, more than likely, capabilities audit. They took lessons learned from that, changed their strategy, were different in their strategy, in effect of we're going by design. We're not doing the incremental stuff. We're going to make this something that people love to use, which in financial software was just completely maverick compared to everybody else. So now that they have their strategy, and now that they've been successful, well, now they got to be prepared, because with IT, barriers to entry can be lowered. As I wrote in my paper, IT allows more information available for people to make better decisions if they want to try another product. It's easier for startups to jump in, especially for something like this where Mint popped in, which ironically Intuit has acquired. And as I said, your product can be emulated right up to the breaking point of copyright infringement. So IT's got to be put in this mix to put your product out there. So it can lower the barriers to entry. But the great thing about Cook was he took IT and he raised them. And a lot of this centered around, again, the strategy of proper design. Data entry was made simple. People felt comfortable with it. But here's the catch, and I don't think people realized at the time. Just like iPhones are today, or smartphones, maybe might be the better way to say it, is, Intuit was easy to pick up and really hard to put down, because after you had some time in entering your data in, budgets can be formed, retirements can be plotted. I mean, if you want to do a debt consolidation, it's all there. Quicken became a product that was easy to pick up and very hard to put down. And a lot of that evolved around the data entry, because the data entry, once you put all the information in and have fed that system, if you want to switch to Money or Microsoft Money, guess what? You got to go from scratch. You may be able to download some stuff here or there from your brokerage account or whatnot, but the majority of that stuff has to be entered in by hand. And what that did was, it's a pain in the rear. it hooked people into that because it was such a heavy lift to do it. And by doing so, it raised barriers to entry. It decreased the threat of substitution where, hey, yeah, I can get Microsoft money next year at half the price, but guess what? I'm going to spend 4 hours pondering, tediously working my computer, just putting in all these checkbook things, or, my stocks. I mean, I know for now my deferred compensation plan through the state, we switched over to a different company. They don't even have a download, so I'd have to do all that by hand. I do it quarterly, but I have to go back through and do all that by hand again, and I'm not going to. And I think Intuit knows that and has expected people to do it, and that's where people go. I can speak from experience. Before the cloud came through, my system did crash, and I had to get a new computer and everything else, and I had to go back through and enter that stuff in, and they could charge me double, and I'm still going to keep going. But that's a tangible asset, a less tangible asset than hard money, but it's people's time. As we just talked about, the threat of competition substitutes, and raising the switching cost, again, as I just said, in the amount of time that it would take someone to do so. Nice thing about the leveraging of IT is, the cloud. I can pull and I can upload my information to the cloud. I can pull it down anywhere. I can sync my data. I'm good to go. Also with IT, through Intuit.com, not only is the cloud there, I can get the latest and greatest version of Quicken installed to my desktop. Everything's synced without even having to leave home. So IT has definitely been leveraged. Also look at SnapTax came out a couple years ago for more simple returns, where students or young adults getting out on their own can just take pictures of their W-2s and actually be done in a couple minutes. I mean, if that's not proper leveraging IT for differentiation, you'd be hard pressed to find something else. And again, I mean, with the success of their differentiation with Quicken, they were able to expand to new markets. As I mentioned earlier, the TurboTax, the SnapTax, QuickBooks, etc. Quicken Loans. Intuit's Quicken Loans is probably typically like the top few places of best places to work, and right now they're on just below Wells Fargo, I believe, for home mortgage orientation for direct mortgage loans to consumers. So Intuit definitely has the sustainability, and it's all due from differentiation, all due from their strategy of being different and being design driven, which has allowed them this luxury. And they're not holding back. Right now, as far as leveraging IT, they're going to be enabling the contribution from other network platforms, using data again to create delight, enabling customers to have better products with breakthrough benefits, expanding globally through developers. Even QuickBooks. If you got QuickBooks, you can get paid on a smartphone. Same thing with their retail payments and mobile payments. It's, the mantra is get paid anywhere with any payment type and any device. And honestly, they're leveraging IT properly. So who wouldn't want that? I'm gonna wrap it up here. Again, I'm a little out of my comfort zone. I like to write and I like to talk, and I'm 13 minutes into this now. It's been a great semester, a short one, but again, I always learn something really good from you guys, especially in the MIS stuff. I'll be taking some MSIS classes next semester, and be interesting to see which degree I finish first. But Professor, it's been a pleasure. It's been a treat. Thank you for your time.